And we are live.
Kicking it back here in,
what is the Duffy House? No, this is
it works.
The studio.
Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Maybe this is where my future home will be. That's encouraging. That's it.
Well, I love it here. There's always a great feel here. So.
I really hope you're not a prophet. Otherwise, this is my new home. There it is.
Pull out couch. You got it all. It's cool. So I'm so excited to be back again. This is episode 13. We actually had 12.5 in there for the first time.
Yeah.
So that
stellar.
Yeah, went over well. I changed the name of this. I always like to do, I'm starting to do like these little this is what's coming.
Right.
And I did a title called Sleeping with the Enemy and got a lot of different feedback from it. And I was thinking, not really hitting the mark of what I want, but that's okay. But there is some truth behind Sleeping with the Enemy, but we changed it. I changed it today to a modern day whodunit. And you'll see the reason why.
Love it.
And I think with a lot of these things that like Sleeping with the Enemy or and that one wasn't as good as I wanted, but like these movies, these modern day whodunit type things where you're watching it and you know the end plot, but then all of a sudden this thriller, this craziness changes and you're like, what? I never expected that.
Yeah.
And so that's what I really wanted to get across today. So I changed it to a modern day whodunit. So here we are. But before, as normal, before we get into everything else, I just wanted to recap a couple of things about 1LoveHTX, the Whosoevers HTX, and of course, obviously, we're here with Westcliff. It's just the modern day trifecta.
There it is.
But what has happened? So we had an incredible first ever date night in Katy, Texas, where we had Tidings come out and play his incredible music. People got connected with him. We had incredible food from Santiago's, and we had Brian Sumner, pro skateboarder, and used to be with Birdhouse, come in and talk about marriage and identity and dating and everything else, and just nailed it. And the feedback we had was incredible. We had space supposedly for 200 people. Thank God we didn't sell out. We actually sold out on 100, and we could not have fit another person in there comfortably. So AC was working overtime, everything. And I was like, wow, how did this?
I didn't see 100 coming.
I didn't see 100 coming. But we planned, we had the ability to quote unquote sell 200. And I'm like, thank goodness we didn't sell 200 because this would have been.
Wow, man.
So if that's not God knowing the future, I don't know what
that's
is.
it. Wow. Stellar.
Yeah. So, all right. So here's my brain. Are you ready for this? I'm going to start it out. And then I want to see Duffy unpack his brain on this because I had a 3 a.m. morning. And I always have these things. I was texting Brian at 3 a.m. and he was like, "What are you doing up?" And I'm like, "What are you doing up?" I go, "I didn't expect you to see this," but
he's like, "I'm in rock and roll. I haven't gone to bed yet."
Right.
What do you want? Yeah.
But I get these moments, and usually when that happens, I'm like, "Okay, God, do you have something for me today? Because I'm awake. I can't go back to sleep, and I want to dive into it." And so the day before, I'm trying to figure out, and I always pray, Lord, what's our next podcast? What's going on? And so I was led to, let me see if I can say this right. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It's one of those strange books that no one ever reads in the Bible. Habakkuk.
Okay.
Is that how you say it?
Solid. Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Habakkuk. I read Habakkuk the day before. And it's one of those moments that after I read it, I was like, well, that was good, but I didn't get a nugget out of it. I was like, I don't really have a podcast on this one. So
thanks, Habakkuk.
Yeah. Thanks, Habakkuk. We'll try again later. So 3 a.m. rolls around the next day and I get up and I'm like, and I had Ruth on my mind. I was like, Ruth, okay, and it's because somebody else was telling me about Ruth and we were talking about it. I was like, well, maybe that's it. So I'm getting my coffee going. I'm talking to Brian and I told him what I was doing. And as I'm sitting there, I opened up my little Bible app and it was, of course, at Habakkuk. And I was going to look for Ruth. And immediately after Habakkuk, I see Zephaniah. And I was like, well, that's another one I haven't read either. And I opened up Zephaniah and it's the exact same amount of chapters as Habakkuk.
Wow.
3 and 3. And I was like, okay, maybe it's not Ruth. Maybe it's Zephaniah because I've never read Zephaniah. So I was like, let's do it. 3 chapters should be an easy read. Lord, what do you have for me? And I read it. Now, the funny thing about this was, as I read it, I got a whole lot out of it. And then I realized that Habakkuk and Zephaniah are not too different from each other.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, did I just miss it before? And you were saying, let me let you read another one so you can get what I want. But here's what happened. After I read it, the thing that downloaded in my brain and brought back so many conversations upon conversations that I've had in bars or with friends or, wherever with people is this whole thought process of people being angry with God.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I asked the question, why are you angry? Why do you hate God or why do you want nothing to do with God? And there's so many different things and scenarios in there, but this distance between people and God. And so I have to ask those questions and the answers are always different.
Yeah.
But it goes back to God not performing well for them.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to judge. I'll be honest and be the first one to say I've been there at times in my life. I've had moments where I've been upset with God. Like, God, why did you let that happen? Why did this happen? And so after I read those 2 books, I realized that there was a lot of prophecy in both of those books.
Yeah.
Prophecy from then, and also what I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, prophecy for now and coming. Right. And then we see that all over the Bible. And so the thing that hit me was, wait a second. We want to be quick to be upset with God. We want to be mad because he let this and that happen. Mm-hmm. When in all actuality, there is so much stinking love through all of those books of the Bible that he gives years and years and hundreds and thousands of years of warning.
Yes. Yeah.
Of warning that we're going, why did you let this happen? Or why did that happen? Or why is, when he's going, wait, if you read, I'm warning you. And then the one that made me think real quick was like Noah. And a lot of people, we think that Noah just had this download from God to build this ark. And he went out there and said, guys, get the tools, get the hand tools, get the power saws, we're going to build this thing and we'll have it done in a week. No, it took 100 and something years.
Yeah.
And so when I thought about that, I was like, well, there was 100 and something years of warning to the people, turn, stop doing what you're doing. I love you and I want to preserve. Okay. So there I am. And I'm going, why are we so mad at God when, as we've said before, if there's a God, if there's good, there has to be evil. And if there's evil and there's Satan, there has to be good. There has to be God, right? There's always a balance there. And so what I also thought was everything I know about Satan, everything I know about witchcraft, everything I know about just that darkness and the dark side of stuff, I don't see any warnings there, like good warnings, or helpful warnings, or protective warnings. Or it's all steal, kill, and destroy.
Yeah.
The enemy's not trying to warn us. The enemy's trying to take us down.
Yeah.
He's being sneaky.
Exactly.
So that's where that whole thing, sleeping with the enemy and a modern day whodunit, made me think, how many times in our lives are we mad at the wrong person and not putting blame at the right place? We're saying, God, you're wrong, when actually we should be going, we shouldn't be mad at the person that did it even. This is a spiritual battle, right?
Yeah.
Where is the root of this? The root of it is Satan. The root of it is evil.
Yeah.
That's where the pain is coming from.
Yeah.
But we're quick to say, God, you're wrong.
Yeah. Man.
Crazy, huh?
Wow. Piece of cake on that one. It's like, I think to back up, like for people that are in the midst. Did you say tobacco or Habakkuk? I think I said tobacco, actually. I think whenever we look at what people have been through, like if someone had just had something happen to them, I think it's fair to just take a quick moment that any theological answer they get when they're in the moment of that pain, they will not care.
No, yeah.
Usually in the middle of it, like if someone, I just had like 2 days ago was just like a day of death. I mean, it was just like, I got a number of people that hit me from other parts of my life and world. This person passed away. A little bit later on in the day, this person just tragically died. Young to old and everything. It was just so bizarre. It was like 3 deaths in one day. You know, it was just weird. And in that moment, for me to have given anybody the theological reason, they would it would have to be a long distance call, because if it was in the same room, they'd probably punch me.
Right.
So they don't want, like, it's fair that in people in their suffering, the theological answer won't do. However, you are attacking, rightly so, mad, like thinking, like, we got to think about it, right? Like, what's that about? I think it's interesting, like in the book of Job, as an example, like Satan, his angle with God is like, listen, these people will never be faithful to you. Not really. You bless them. That's why they go with you, man.
Yeah.
They're not sold out to you. They're not going to lose everything for you. That's deception. And then God's sort of like, okay, let's see.
Right.
They'll be faithful. Let's watch. I mean, it's interesting. I think it's fair to point out that there's several layers to this that you and I could uncover in this, just this one show. And one of them is like, some of it is like people want to exist without God, and at best they want to control him.
Right.
Okay, fine. You want to do it your way? You want to see what it's like with your alternative? Go ahead. There's your alternative. And that's how life is going to go for you. Right. No peace, no love, no joy, no understanding. And every bad thing that's going to happen, it's just going to feed on top of itself. Right. So I think like there's that element, right?
Yeah.
Like just dealing with God to a certain extent will allow Satan to move into a world that he's the prince of.
Right.
It's been handed over to him. So we're in a very real battle right now. Right. A very real battle that causes us hurt and pain. And he is allowed to run roughshod. Now, does that mean that God doesn't intervene? No, he absolutely intervenes. But this is in our home. You and I are the foreigners.
Right.
This isn't our home. This isn't a home game.
Right.
There's something waiting for us. But in the meantime, because of what we're living in. So I think number one is people that would just rather live without him. And then they want to control him when they need him.
Right.
I don't need you this whole, oh, now I do.
Right.
Oh, I don't care to have you in part of my life. Now I do. Well, you've spoken to that, what life looks like, practically speaking. You create more dumpster fires on your own than life, right? I mean, you've been so vulnerable about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is just God revealing, like you've already touched on so many times, his grace and his mercy and his love right in the middle.
There's so much chasing.
Yes. Like you just said, sometimes we lose. Like, you flip 3 or 4 pages in scripture, 600 years went by.
Right. He's
trying to get this group of people to get it. He's trying to get this group of people to get it. And sometimes he will even use the enemies of God to bring people in line. I can tell my kid, don't cross the street. Don't cross the street. Don't cross the street. Day 6, don't cross the street. Now I have a choice at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I either let the FedEx truck that's continually driving too fast run them over, and then I lose them this side of heaven.
Right.
Or eventually I have to communicate in a different way with them to get their attention.
Right.
And there are ways to do it, some of which our listeners may or may not agree with, but I have mine that's slightly old school / very old school. And it's a way of communicating with them in a way that their experience travels from their little behinds to their brain. And they start to associate not listening to me and not obeying me to something that I'm trying to keep them from that's their ultimate destruction.
Right.
Now, the difference is, just like any good father, you put your kid on your knee, or you should, and go, I love you so much. Here's why I'm disciplining you. Right. Because what you keep wanting to do is going to squash you, quite literally. So I think there's also, like, there's, our God is playing 4D chess,
And I'm so glad you brought the example of your child up, because I actually thought about that on the way here. It was a nugget too that was like, so you as a dad put guidelines and rules in place to protect the child.
Yeah.
God does the same thing. We talked about that on some of the other podcasts, is the great guidelines of the Bible and things that he put in place is not to just browbeat us, but to go, these are things that are not good for you. I want to forewarn you. And they're going to end up bad.
Yeah.
But the difference, God has given us choice, because true love is not the browbeating and forcing. That would not be love. That would be forced. But so he gives us the choice. Now I've warned you now. And from our standpoint, we can't be there all the time,
Yeah.
And so what happens if, to your point, you are not there to catch your child that does cross the street after you've told them umpteen times and even given them a little bit of a spanking or whatever, and they do cross it, and we'll make the story softer. We don't want them terribly injured, but let's just say they get clipped by the Now that child represents the world that's angry with God.
Yeah.
Does that child go, Dad, you suck. You weren't there to protect me?
Yeah.
No, actually, that child probably doesn't do that. That child probably goes, Dad told me over and over again not to cross this road.
Yeah.
And now I got clipped and I hurt my leg.
Yeah.
And I'm mad at the FedEx guy for going that fast.
Yeah.
That scenario actually worked out right.
Yeah.
God forbid. They're not screaming at you. They're not laying on the road going, Dad, you told me 1,000 times, but you weren't here to stop. But that's what we're doing as human race, right?
Yeah.
We have choice. And going back to your other point about, what we choose to do, if we choose to walk with God, the outcome's going to be different.
Yeah.
If we choose to do it, or like you said, just have nothing to do with God, right?
Yeah.
Are we choosing our own self, or are we choosing the other spiritual path?
Right.
Because really, there is not.
Yeah.
I'm either following God or I'm following Satan.
That's it.
That's really it.
Yeah.
There isn't this, but I've made a path. No, the enemy says, this is my world, buddy. You're playing in my world. You're playing by my games. You're not following him. Come hang with me.
Yeah.
So what are we really choosing?
Yeah.
It's pretty much there.
I love that. Well, and okay. And then let me put myself on the hot seat. This is a self-imposed hot seat.
Okay.
I'm about to do. Okay.
This is going to be good.
I could
listen
intellectually,
up.
I could intellectually argue, like, I could just ignore this point, but I want to be fair to our listeners.
Okay.
But there are people that are mad at God that use the example of my child. And maybe their parent never told them to not cross the street.
Mm.
Maybe their parent was the one driving the FedEx truck.
Mm.
So some people, and I, I could avoid that, right?
Yeah.
But I want to be fair.
Yeah.
So, what you and I just beat the snot out of on that topic,
right,
is 100% true. For some of our listeners, that's real. Like there's an issue of rebellion. You've heard it. You don't care. You want to do it your own way. Sometimes we fall into that because we made a mistake and then and then guilt and shame drives us
Right.
to go all in on that life or
Right.
making those choices because we feel we're unworthy to come back. Like that's one set of lies. And we have listeners, I'm sure any of us have experienced that, where you go, okay, I can't get back to where I was. Let me just try to make this broken option work.
Right.
And that's what you and I were just hitting on.
Yeah.
But the other side are these heartbreaking cases where you're like, how's that even fair?
Mm.
And I want to be fair to that. And
It's good.
I want to be fair to the fact that if your parent or someone in your life or someone you dated was the FedEx driver in that analogy, or never told you, hey, going on the street's a bad idea. In fact, maybe they even like, going out in the street's a great idea. That's how I live my life. You should too, kid.
Right.
You know? I want to be fair to our listeners that to where this starts to hit a roadblock is neither one of us know why. I mean, we know sin.
Right.
And Satan, yes and amen, are running roughshod over a broken world. And now sin has fractured everything. Moms, dads, parents, neighborhoods, communities, a country, a world. I mean, we don't have, unless we live under rocks, we don't need any more evidence. Not even nature is compliant. Nature turns on itself right now, right? I mean, there isn't a place you can go in the world where you go, oh, even nature is just chilled.
Right.
There's something, whether the ground shifts and you fall in a big giant hole in Cali, or you're in some other part and the forest can't help but catching on fire. Somewhere else, it just the water rises 6, 8, 10 feet. Hello, Houston.
Right.
Like every, to where it's fractured that deep. What's that about? Yes, it's sin. That's the easy intellectual answer.
Mm-hmm.
But like the real heart part of it, like why would I be given a situation that put me in that? And I would just tell people, at some point there's kind of two parts. One is that some of the most dynamic people I have ever met for the gospel have come out of some of the darkest situations. I beyond even full comprehension. And why that is, and what is it about what shapes their faith and faithfulness out of coming out of such lousy circumstances, I can't even fully grasp how God works through pain and suffering and hardship. But the most dynamic people that God has ever placed in front of me in my life were not the people who go, and then I grew up with 2 parents, a minivan, a white picket fence, and then I won the lottery. And after I won the lottery, I went to college and I got a 4.0. And then I got the dream job that I ever... No, they're like the most dynamic followers of Jesus. I had nothing. Yeah. I grew up in abuse. I grew up in addiction. And like they discovered this father. So part of it is like this anger is I would tell people, if you're angry, man, be angry with him in the sense that talk to him. He's taken accusations before. He's taken false accusations before 2,000 years ago. He took hatred and vitriol. But if you'll just talk to him, even if right now you're angry, you don't even need to censor it. Like he's not just a big boy. He's a big God.
Right.
Throw it at him, man. But at least you're talking to him.
Right.
That's a start, right? And ask him, help me work through this because I'm so angry. I'm so upset. Where were you? But at least talk to him. Yeah. Don't even ask one of us. Ask him. And I think that's a huge piece to this because what he'll do in it. You may never get the answer to why on this side of heaven, but man, the most dynamic people that God uses. And that's where it all comes back to the cross. Like, I don't know why he let that thing happen to you if you're hearing us, but I certainly know that he put it on the line to rescue and redeem it.
Right.
He became that horrible thing that happened to you on the cross. He became it.
Right.
I don't know why. I don't know why he did that for me. Let's just add that extra why in there.
Right.
I don't know why that happened to you, but I don't know why he would die for us either.
Yeah. That's so good. You're saying that, and my brain's kind of going a million miles an hour because, yeah, that's such a deep, good point. And I remember a story. One of my good friends, who's a pastor, said he was like, he had this jar, and it had one marble in it, and he said this marble represents you and your decisions and everything, and this is the way we see our own world sometimes is we're just this marble inside of an empty jar, and he's shaking it and doing all this. And he says, but that's just not reality. everything that we choose, everything that we do, everything that happens to us or anyone else, and he poured the jar full of more marbles. He says, this is true reality of our world. There's so many other people involved.
Man, so true.
Yeah. And he said, so when one reacts, it affects everyone. And so going back to the why, we don't know the why, but like what a parent does or what a neighbor does or a friend does or whatever, I don't know why, but they do affect us.
Yeah.
And the beautiful part about that is exactly what you said. There is a Redeemer that saw that. There is a Redeemer that recognized that the placement in the garden was given with choice and not force. And it was going to be turned on its head. And he said, I'm going to fix this regardless because I love them. And then people do ask that, well, why did he let that happen? Why didn't he just keep us? Well, again, is it true love or is it forced love?
You nailed it.
And
there
so
it is.
And we also live in this, we live in this time thing or this thing called time that was created for us.
Yeah.
God doesn't live in time. He's already seen the redemption. We just happen to be going through it, and we'll have that eternity one day.
Yeah.
And I just think it's such a beautiful picture. And I'm glad you said that because we don't want to miss that. We don't want to, and I had those in my life. And actually it's funny, even though here I am preaching to the choir, is that the right term? I don't know.
There's a choir out there. I'm certain of it. I am dying to see what this audience's choir would look like. Actually, that's one choir I would never cross.
Right.
I would say that. Yeah.
But I find myself getting upset still, even though I know that there is a God running after me and watching over me and taking care of me. On the other hand, just like I said, I know there's an enemy. There's a spiritual battle going on, but I'll catch myself in the moment just like that. And that was this morning. I found myself angry with a friend, not with a friend, or I'm talking with a friend and I'm angry at things that are happening around us with inflation and people taking advantage of the system and charging higher and blah, blah, blah. And I'm getting so mad at this. And I'm like pointing out, workers and dealerships and all this. And I'm like, they're so wrong. And they're going to get theirs one day. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, this is a spiritual battle, man. This is just people. We're getting duped. Let's just say that we are all getting duped in places by the enemy, and things like that. And so how we react to it is a good indicator of what we are going to live daily. Right.
Yeah.
And also what we can change daily,
man,
because I was like, man, I just spent a half hour yelling about these people and talking smack about them when I should have been trying to find ways because I was walking with the enemy. I was sleeping with the enemy, man, when I could have been walking with Jesus and just loving on people and saying, and trusting, like, I know you have this. I don't know how it's going to turn out. It might not turn out the way I think it should turn out.
Right.
But again, going back to, you can't even see it, my faithfulness tattoo, it never fails. I can think of 1,000 times in my life where I thought this was the end of the road and it was just going to end up horribly. And the faithfulness of God, when I put my trust in him, always came out on top.
Yeah.
Period.
Man, so good, dude. And I think that's where people are. I think most people, there may be exceptions out there, but most people, I think they want to know deep down, does God even care? Does he even see me? And is there hope? Is there honestly hope out of this situation? Is there anything that I can get out of it? And I think for some of us, I'm thinking about like the story of Jacob. It's like, if you read that guy's story, it's a hot mess. The name Jacob in the Hebrew is like deceiver, deception.
Yeah.
Nothing personal if your name's Jacob out there. I'm just saying like that's what it means in the Hebrew, okay? It's all good if you're Jacob. You're probably a straight up dude, all right? But, he's got family issues. His parents played favorites. He ends up playing favorites as a parent. Mm-hmm. He's got his favorite wife, that's a whole nother mess with his uncle, who's also a manipulator and a deception person. You read in the scriptures, he's got issues with money. Money's tight. How am I going to get this done? Everything's falling apart. And he realizes, if not for God, I have nothing going for me. And in a moment, God meets him. And it's so cool that God would, like, he wrestles with God, and he won't let God go until he's blessed. God has the ability to touch his hip, and yet it wrenches his hip so that he has a limp, right? So a God that can touch you and wreck your hip for good is letting you wrestle with him.
Right.
He's playing. Okay, you're human. I'll get in it with you. All right. You won't let me go because he realizes I'm at the end of my rope. Every one of my options to move the needle on my own has failed. And I think for a lot of us, I think that's kind of what the grace of God and what he's looking for. A lot of us are going to walk through life with a limp.
Yeah.
And that limp is, wow, in my own strength, I was a failure. Wow, in my family of origin is an absolute mess. Wow, at this phase of my life, I was addicted. Wow, at this phase of my life, I was this, that, and the other. And yet God showed up, met me, blessed me in spite of me. And that's that limp that we walk around with. We all know, those of us that have gotten on the other side of these hard questions, that I'm really not that awesome.
Right. I
didn't really deserve it.
Yeah.
But weren't you good?
Yeah.
And that's where I think, like, per your question, I think that's where we would want our listeners to get to that place where, yeah, I still remember what happened. Yeah, I still drives me nuts from time. And there's my limp.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because I can remember. It still bugs me. But man, grace, like you still want me in this thing? How cool, you know?
Could have been dead 1,000 times over.
That's it, man.
And think about that story. Yeah. A God that had the ability just to could have been like, we're done. I'm not playing this wrestling match with you. But he
didn't look to win.
Yeah. He's like, okay, come on.
Yeah.
Well, I'll play this a little bit.
It's not a God looking to win. You know,
Yeah.
It's a God like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah. It also makes me think too of another thing. I have a lot of friends that are extreme intellectuals. You know, I'm not one of those.
I try to collect PhDs through people. That's what I do. You're smart. You want to be friends? That's
right.
Yeah.
And in that, I also have some of these intellectual friends that aren't sure what they believe. And some flat out say, I don't believe in God. And some say, I'm not sure. But those conversations that we have, some of them stump me. Like they have some good questions that I'm like, I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, then if you don't have an answer for me, how can you believe what you believe? And I'll tell you why. And this is some of the best advice I ever got that downloaded to my heart that helps me remember this is one of my friends said, what is it? And this is for all of our listeners out there that are struggling with this, that you again, kind of like Duffy said, it's like, you're going to meet people, or maybe it's yourself that you're going, why did God let this happen? And you don't have a theological answer for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
But in our own self, how do we know God's real? And without, what's the one thing we can share with people that they can't refute? And that's our story. And that's what I think about. It's like, I don't know the answer to that question, but I can tell you right now, in so many places, ABC through Z, and there's not enough letters in the alphabet, of places where God has clearly rescued me. And that's good enough for me.
Man,
I don't have to have all the answers. And hopefully one day I can ask those questions at the throne.
If you even care.
If I even care, I'll be too busy running through streets of gold. Right on. But yeah, it's like, no, it really doesn't matter because there's been too much proof already.
Yeah.
And so I just want to encourage people too, for your own self, but also to remember that God doesn't need our protecting. He's God, right? Yeah. He doesn't need our protecting. So don't worry and don't get upset with people, because I think that's also another trap, Yeah. They want us to argue.
Yeah.
Because if we argue and they get us riled up too, is it them?
Right.
No.
Right.
It's the enemy. It's the enemy just trying to stir up strife. The best thing we can do is just go, I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
But I believe because of my story. Let me tell you my story.
Exactly.
So good.
That's a great point. Your story really is your greatest.
Yeah.
That 110. Actually, one of Westcliffe's board members, a dear friend of mine. This man, the F-18 Super Hornet. Those of you who have any idea what I just said, which all branches of the military, I believe, are still using. He helped design key components of it. He used to argue with the man that would report to Steve Jobs. I mean, so like when he went into the computer software world, like he's a big dog intellectually, you know? And one of the things that like drew me to him, and one of the reasons I wanted him to be a part of what we're doing at Westcliff, I asked him, I'm like, you know, so what is up? You know, like, where do you come at it with faith? And he's like, listen, Josh, the way I'm wired, Genesis, that's a struggle. Okay. I mean, scientifically, I struggle here, and here. I'm a scientific brain.
Yeah.
But then he paused, his eyes started to fill up with tears, and he's like, I couldn't do anything with Jesus. I know he lived. There's too much that says he lived. I know what he said. I believe he died. And there's zero explanation other than he's God. I believe he rose again from the dead. There's too much smoke around that one person.
Right.
So what he basically said to me was, if for me to make sense of scripture, I had to work backwards. Everybody thinks, oh, let's start in Genesis. He's like, no, I started with Jesus.
Right.
And I began to filter everything backwards because I could not. This person is so compelling,
right,
and so different than everybody else that's ever walked in human history, that's what broke his heart.
Right.
That's what pulled on him. And I think that's for our people to know too. Like, it comes down to him.
Yeah.
All the arguments, everything. Him, Jesus, not God, generic, not church. It's going to, at some point, the conversation within ourselves or with someone else, Jesus.
Yeah. And that's the book, Case for Christ by Lee Strobel.
Yeah.
That such a crazy, crazy book. Again, I'm not an intellectual, so I'm not that level. And those are the ones where I have to read the chapter like 10 times just to grasp what he's saying. But one of my friends who read it went through it all, and he actually found some other research on it. And that was one of the things that he said. He was like, man, for one person to fulfill these prophecies, the number of prophecies,
it's nuts, man.
It was like virtually impossible, mathematically. And so I don't even understand the mathematical side of it. Like, you start talking to the 0.0000999, and I'm like, yeah.
Oh, it just gets ignorant.
10% is hard for me.
Yeah. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, Case for Christ, that's a good one.
Well, I mean, and how do we do this? Like, I just thought we just started talking 10 minutes ago.
But hey, cool.
It's nuts, man.
It's nuts.
It's nuts. I mean, there it is. You just set it up.
Yeah. So, man,
what are your beautiful parting words? I know there's something. You got something. Come on.
The only thing, again, I'm going to go back to it. It's like, in choice, it comes to two choices, really. There's no in between.
Amen.
In there. And
Amen.
Again, like Duffy said, we don't have to figure it all out. We don't have to have the answers to it all. But I'll encourage you and listeners, and especially those of you that maybe know someone, is like Duffy said, encourage people to, one, hear your story, and to, two, bring it to the God that they believe in or don't believe in.
Yeah.
And
love it.
Do it as hard as you want.
That's it.
Go all out. He can take it, and encourage that, because the God that I serve, the God that Duffy serves, and I know the God that y'all serve, comes back with massive, massive love and comes through every single time on those things.
He did just fine 2,000 years ago.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, that's awesome. Thanks for joining us again. There's so much more we could have gotten into here. I don't know. I mean, just we're going to have some fun, but please, I just want to encourage you also, pass this around, pass our podcast around to different people. We just had some cards made, and we're passing those out to people, but I'm going to encourage you just to talk to people and send them to our website. But also, if you're listening to and you haven't, we would love a review on Spotify or iTunes or whatever. It just helps out the movement. And also, if you're in the Houston area, please feel free to push people to www.1LoveHTX.org, or is it org or com? I don't know. It's one of those. But that's also going to be where we're going to have some more scheduled events and things like that, in ways that you can support. We're fully funded through individual support. We don't take a salary. This is all volunteer. We have a board of members that oversee everything and show where our money goes to. So it's all for you. We just want to give back and just have some fun out there. Play. That's what we love doing. So love you guys.
Love you guys. See ya. Bye.